Welcome back to Dungeon Master's Corner. Today, we'll be talking about those difficult players and the consequences of their actions.
New patron, who dis? So in my group, when I was a very early DM, I had something of a problem player. He wanted to play his characters in a particular way, which I was fine with. But the moment I, as the DM, introduced any kind of controversy for his character, i.e. a challenge he would need to overcome, he would suicide his character or attempt to break my game to get revenge. At one point, he asked me if his cleric could multi-class into warlock, so I decided, hey, let me make an offer and see what he's looking for in character. I always had this rule with my table: if you want a multi-class, I'm good with it, but there has to be a story reason. If your paladin's going to become a warlock, then there has to be a good reason. Why is your paladin gonna have mommy and daddy angry at each other? Give me a purpose. Well, in this case, cleric. So we stop off in a city. They're all at a tavern, and a beautiful woman with long white hair, pale skin, and glacial blue eyes approaches him. She asks to speak and takes him away from the group, which I actually do. I take him away from the group. We walk away from the table. With an offer of power, a little away from the table roleplay, he shakes my hand, and the pact is sealed. This is where the fun began. I told him to add a level of Fey Pact Warlock, and we went back to the table. When we sat down, he's flipping through his notes, and he turns and asks me, "Oh yeah, what was her name again?" "You never asked her name." He said, "I thought that was implied." I told him, "You're dealing with Fey. Never assume anything is implied." And this is something that you see quite often with the Fae. They don't offer anything without a price. They don't just give you something. If you don't specifically ask something, they're not going to specifically tell you. Now I know what a few people are thinking, that it was a dick move to pull on a player, but I had no intention of never telling him who he was working for. I just wanted to create a little drama for his character, an interesting goal outside of the main quest, a hook to really get him to start role-playing, to make him part of the group. At this point, he was pretty much keeping himself at arm's length. His character didn't really speak a common language with anyone, so I really wanted to pull him in more. This would kind of throw a spotlight on him. In fact, it even seemed to work, because for the next couple sessions, he and the rest of the party, who were really curious about what was going on, started looking for any clues that would reveal who he had sold his soul to. They continued working on the main quest, of course, but every opportunity any of them got, they tried to get just a little more information. So I thought things were going great. Now, anyone familiar with the She knows that I had given him Mab as his patron. He had given himself to the Queen of Air and Darkness, leader of the Winter Court. But it took a couple sessions for the rest of them to figure it out. It bonded them, this little mystery. Though unfortunately, the camaraderie did not last. Being a warlock means being beholden. Same thing with being a cleric. It means being beholden. And that was something this player refused to be. He always wanted to do things when he wanted to do things, regardless of whether or not it had any effect on the rest of the game, the rest of the party, or his own character. Yet again, he decided to suicide himself a session or two after he discovered who his patron was. He didn't want to do what she said, so he figured, what's the easiest way to avoid that? Well, get my character killed. So he decided to do recon on a fortress that they were planning on going up against the next day. And by recon, I mean use a ring that made him look like a zombie wander in around the other undead, and get shot to death by paladins. I'd like to point out that he had not told his party where he was going. He just left the tavern in the middle of the night. He was wearing a magic ring that made him look like a zombie. His body was just kind of tossed in with the rest of the zombies, and was never recovered. At least, not by his party. Anyway, something I learned from this particular story was that sometimes playstyles just do not align, and there is no way to make them align. Some players expect to be their Gary or Mary Sue and not have DM force any kind of character moments on them at all. I just want to go in, beat things up, kill things, get gold, and go home. I don't care about character development. I don't care about plot progression. While I don't see that as a bad thing in the right group, it didn't work well with my group. We were very story-driven, very character-driven. I loved dropping little dramas onto them, and they loved to lean into them and really make their characters the forefront of the story. The module was the background. They were the forefront. And it just didn't work. He was too much of a power gamer. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong with power gamers. Some power gamers can be amazing role players. Some role players power game to make sure they get the most out of their roleplay. It's just a matter of finding the balance that works with your group. And we didn't work. And like any relationship or healthy decision in a relationship, we both moved on to find our more appropriate groups. You just have to find what works for you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Dungeon Master's Corner. If you'd like to support us, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Reliably Chaotic. Please, we need to pay our debt to the MAB. I'm not apologizing. You can also drop us a line on Twitter at Reliably Chaotic. We'd love to hear from you.